Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and this is dedicated to all those spirits out there who believe life is meant to be magical and fun. Here we venture to share the very mysteries of self and reality. My purpose is to help light that spark inside of you, to reawaken your sense of fascination and awe towards the world. I'm going to try to help you hack reality and unleash your potential and open unlimited possibilities of wealth, health, and relationships in your life. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today I'm so excited. I have Kevin Young, a groundbreaking coach, and I was so excited I first watched your interview with Ali O'Shea, and I started reading more about it, and I've been talking to a lot of other people in my interviews about channeling. And I started looking through your website, and you had so many different things that you'd offered, some experience with law of attraction coaching. Kevin has written some really amazing articles in Choice magazine. He is a longtime life coach. Some of the stuff that it takes to become certified is pretty amazing. It says professionally, you are credentialed at the International Coach Academy. You have 500 hours of coaching experience. You spent 125 hours in ICF accredited coach training program. And so the bottom line is, once you go through this process, you get a lot more experience. And I'm really excited to get your perspective as you worked with clients, and you particularly specialize in helping people develop their intuition. And so I just can't wait to get your perspective on this. Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Kevin.
Thanks for having me today, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, so first of all, just so for everybody who may not know who you are, tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into doing this.
Sure. Well, most people are surprised to find out that I actually have a background in technology. Mm-hmm. Many years I was in the computer field, both writing software, designing systems for automotive and so forth. And it was in 2008 that I was diagnosed with a non-cancerous brain tumor on the right side. And it was one of those things where you just it shakes you up. It kind of stops you in your tracks.
Right.
And I knew about alternative methods and so forth, but I wasn't a really big believer in that, and I didn't really have a spiritual background. It was very scientific, but it kind of forced me to face into who I was and to start looking at the things that were maybe alternative, because what they wanted to do is basically cut a hole in my head and pull the tumor out, and it was living on the balance nerve, which was affecting also the facial nerve and the hearing nerve. So it was a pretty dicey thing. So over that year, I spent some time I did hypnotherapy sessions, I had coaching, I think I did a little channeling I can't remember if I did that at that time, but just trying to find ways to heal this. Mm-hmm. And it was right after the diagnosis is when we found the Abraham Hicks channeling material, the mm-hmm. Esther Hicks who channels. And so I spent that year, I totally didn't believe it. It was like, come on, there's somebody's just quieting their mind and they're opening up to some consciousness that's talking through them.
Right.
But the more I listened, we listened, my wife and I, and got CDs and we bought DVDs, and I couldn't pick it apart. Like, it was pure positive energy. The message was always the same. And so that was kind of the kickoff of my journey into this sort of awareness of another level of connection. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up, once I gave up the desire to not have the surgery, I realized I simply wasn't in a place where I could get rid of this tumor on my own. I wasn't evolved enough to understand it and to let go of the what I learned later was the negative energy I had been carrying, which caused the tumor to begin with. I was just not at that place. And so I let go of the idea of healing the tumor, and I said, I just got to have the surgery. We're going to wrap up things here at the house. We're going to fly out to California where they do these surgeries. And within a couple of weeks, because of the immense tension I had released in myself, a friend of mine said, I know somebody else who had this same surgery, and it was right here in Michigan. We live outside of Detroit. And it was at a hospital that was probably 15 minutes from us.
Right.
I thought the only place that did this was in California.
Right.
And so by letting go is my first law of attraction moment that I had identified. Mm-hmm. I let go of the tension, and I focused on what I wanted, and the answer showed up. And so in the fall of 2009, I actually had brain surgery, and they pulled out the tumor. It destroyed my hearing and my balance on that side, but it saved the facial feature mostly. I still have a little bit of a little sensitivity in that side. But then I got my life back, and then things started accelerating from there in terms of understanding of the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And that then dovetailed several years later into the coaching, and that's a long story, but essentially a friend just said, Kevin, every time we talk, you're coaching me, and he was a coach already. So why don't you just go and get trained with it?
Right.
So I checked into it, and I found it was very law of attraction based. The coaching modality, the International Coach Federation, who has something like 50,000 coaches.
Oh, they're amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it's at the top of the game because everything is, so it's law of attraction based at the core, and so everything's positive, forward focused, always about empowering the client, and that just so resonated with me. So I went through the intermediate or the basic level course in a year, and I got my certification, and then a few years later I realized I wanted to go to the professional level, and then I got more coaching hours, I got more training, and then I became the professional certified coach, PCC. And that's the level I'm at right now.
And the fascinating thing about their modality that really works is you're not giving advice. You're empowering somebody to give themselves advice.
Right.
And that process really, really works. When somebody's sitting there telling you what to do, it just doesn't have as much power as when you find out in yourself what to do.
Yes. And I got to say, you just hit on the head there, Brian. Mm-hmm. That was the hardest shift that I had to make.
It is.
As a coach, because I was an engineer who had to solve problems. Right. And now I can't solve your problems. Mm-hmm. Right. So I had to give up that side of my personality, and I turned that to be, how can the problem that I need to solve, because my brain still wants to be active, how can I find what's the next question they need to hear, or the next reflection that'll help them find their own awareness. And when I made that paradigm shift, I could relax and settle into my own alignment, and then they had a better experience.
Yeah, a lot of first-time coaches, their first instinct is, this is okay, this is what you need to do, and this, and this, and this. And sometimes that works, but eventually when the person doesn't think it's themselves, it's just very temporary. And that's why this works so well. It's very, very impressive. So I've had episodes on the Reality Revolution, and you had mentioned on Allie's where you're teaching people about intuition and channeling. And so I'm going right into it because I'm fascinated by this. So let's talk beginning about channeling in general. Channeling is a fascinating subject to me, going back all the way, obviously, parts of the Bible are channeled. And you really wonder when you start to understand channeling, how many wonderful works of art were just written by multidimensional characters that were not even...
Sure. Did I lose you? You're not moving, Brian.
All right, now I'm still going.
There you go. All right. You had a nice pose there for a minute.
It might freeze up a little bit. We'll work it out, but I haven't had any on my end. Okay. So the channeling is a fascinating subject, as I was saying. Going back, you wonder what famous works of art might have been channeled. But at the same time, you sometimes will catch somebody on YouTube or where it doesn't feel like they're really channeling. That clearly that they're just straight BS. They want us to think they're channeling, and so then there's the question. Well, there's still is sometimes with channeling, you're activating a part of yourself. It's not really another spirit, but that activating of your part of yourself still opens up part of your personality that is intuitional. And there's a process to go through channeling. I have tried this, and of course I've read Jane Roberts' book on ESP, which was a good start. Of course, I've read Abraham Hicks and Esther Hicks. When she describes how she first started to channel, she would just, her meditating, but then she would type on her computer and kind of get into a conversation at the beginning. And I've tried these processes myself, and I've had some pretty big moments where I've had stuff that started coming out, and then is that coming from me? I don't know. And then there's that long moment. Is this coming from me? And how will I ever know if it's coming from me? Another interesting thing is when you listen to some of these channelers are talking about aliens and completely bizarre things, and some of them are very genuine. So I guess I have to, in many cases, just check myself. For instance, when I go to Abraham Hicks, she is so genuine. It doesn't matter if you believe her or not. What she's saying is so powerful. That is what resonates. And as you had told your story, when I went, and I have a friend that can vouch for this, when I went and saw Abraham Hicks a few months ago, I looked over and it said, can you see the aura? She has this big old thing of energy above her. And you had mentioned that too, that you could see that the collective conscious that she's downloading, and sometimes some questions she'll get more and less. And I wanted, first, before we go into your coaching modalities for channeling, I wanted to get your impressions on that. You had, when you first started listening to Abraham Hicks, and then you went and saw Abraham Hicks in person, right?
Yes.
And then tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so that was the summer of 2009 when I was really in a lot of pain and getting ready to have the surgery. And so we drove out to Chicago. It's about 5 hours from here, and sat in the audience. It was our first workshop. And I was raising my hand, but I wasn't in an aligned state, so I was not going to get picked. There was no energy coming out of me, and that's one of the requirements to get picked in the hot seat. I figured that out later when I was able to get picked, just because I figured out the mechanics of it. But at that time, I was not able to be aligned. But what did happen is there were times when I was kind of meditating, had my eyes closed and just relaxing, and then I'd hear something, and the words would get louder. And there was one time when I actually saw over Esther's head like this almost kind of cloud beings. It looked like what would be the Abraham Collective if you could turn them into like physical spiritual beings, just kind of gray, fuzzy cloud beings. But it was pretty striking. I'd never had that experience. And then not long after that, there was a lady whose son, she was in the hot seat. She said her son had a brain tumor.
Oh, wow.
It's like, okay, what's the coincidence? Well, of course, it's when law of attraction's active and you're in alignment, the chances are 100%. Things have to manifest. And so I saw the words, and it was another segment, but they said, and it was almost like in gold letters, in your pain, you must remain in hopefulness.
Oh, wow.
And that was the key. You have to separate, when things are not going well, you have to separate out your emotions from what's happening around you, because your emotions are what caused what's happening around you, including brain tumors.
Right.
So it was really the first lesson I had in how important it was to start owning the vibration, where I was blaming people and angry at this and that. That's my whole life had that energy around it. And so that was the beginning of the process of healing many areas of my life.
And it's crazy to think that tumor, you just basically got it by accident, just from.
No, I created it.
You created it, but it wasn't purposeful. It was unintentional.
We never create anything negatively purposefully, but we do create them in all cases.
But it was emotions that you weren't, you were not as tuned in to how these emotions affect your body.
Well, I had no idea, to be honest with you.
Right.
I had allergies. I had stomach upset. I had sleep problems. I had sleep apnea for many years, which is now gone.
Right.
All these have either minimized or completely gone. I'm more healthy now than I have been since I was probably a kid, because I've learned the techniques of vibrational alignment and letting go. So
if I've given you a little bit of my story about how I want to channel, and I've also, I have books like Opening to Channel, I think, is one that I've read by Sanaya Roman. And so if I come to you and I say, hey, I really want to channel, I think I'm channeling, give me a first step to start that process if I were to want to start this process of possibly channeling.
Sure. I'd say the first step is to acknowledge that you're already doing it.
Okay. So we're channeling all the time, you think?
Yes, we are.
And so some
to
of the
varying
thoughts,
degrees.
So some of the thoughts coming into our mind are not necessarily ours. We just don't know how to recognize them?
Sure. So the way I look at it, are you familiar with the Abraham emotional scale? There's like 22 emotions. Okay. And at the top are the most positive, high-frequency ones, joy and love and so forth. And the bottom is fear and desperation and hopelessness. Well, that's also, it's not only a frequency range, but it's like a valve opening, degree of valve opening. So down at the bottom, the valve's almost completely closed to source energy, the higher part of your own consciousness and whatever spiritual energy you want to connect in with. And the more you move up that emotional scale, the wider the valve opens and the more blended a being you become. When you're up at the top of the scale, then your valve is basically wide open and your human mind is very little of a participant in whatever it is that you're doing. Right. So it doesn't matter if you're painting a picture, as you said, earlier, or you're composing a piece of music or playing a piece of music. I play drums and I get to that state. Or if I'm coaching, I'm very comfortable and familiar with the feeling of being in harmony and alignment and trust within myself, like I am right now. The part of me is channeling right now based on your question. You're pulling through me this answer. Right. And so the key is to not get in your head and to be present in the moment. And as soon as you start worrying about what's coming next, or am I doing it right, or is it me, then now you're going back down the scale and you're closing the valve off. Right. So we just want to do anything we can to relax in the moment, open the valve up, be present, and trust what comes through.
So, and for people listening, you may hear the word channeling and think, oh, that sounds crazy. But if you listen to what Kevin's saying, channeling is a part of getting to know yourself and understanding your own intuition, and going through this process helps you to understand the way that you make decisions and intuition in general. And I wanted to, you're coaching more than just channeling. You're coaching how to tap into our intuition, correct?
Well, and that facilitates channeling. I don't teach channeling.
You don't teach. You teach intuition.
No. I don't really teach much. What I do is I coach. Right. In other words, I help people to find their own harmony, and in that process, channeling becomes an option.
Okay, I understand. So then, one problem that I've had when I've talked with people about intuition is there's a part of our brain that will identify, when we start looking for things, we will see them. Like if I look for a white Subaru, I start seeing white Subarus all the time. But that does not necessarily mean that's an intuitive signal. And so it's trying to differentiate those times when my brain is just finding stuff I'm looking for and something that's important or significant. And I know my feelings are there, but I wanted to know if you had any particular tips so that we can cut the wheat from the chaff, because we're seeing synchronicities, but some synchronicities are more important than others. For instance, I love your article where you wrote about the white Mercedes. That wasn't really a synchronicity, but it was something that it gave you intuition. There's something important about this white Mercedes, and it ended up helping you to get published and align with that. So that's what I wanted to know, is that magic moment when it's not just a thing that you're seeing, but it's something that's important that our intuition needs to respond to.
They're the same thing.
They're always the same thing?
A synchronicity is simply you in alignment enough that you're getting the messages that are always being broadcast by your higher self to point you towards something that's important to you, that you've established either consciously or through experience in the past that's important to you, that your inner being already knows and sees. And so we're always getting bombarded with synchronicities, with impulses. But usually we're pretty far from being tuned to receive the frequency. We're on a different radio station. We're down the scale on the messy impulse. We're always getting impulses, but the question is, are they leading us to what we want? Right. And they'll lead us to what we want when we're in the frequency range of them, which is high vibration.
So I always ask anybody I talk to, I have these general questions. What is your morning, now that you've done this and you've coached other people, do you have a morning routine that has helped you in your process?
Well, nobody likes to hear this, but no, not really. Okay. What I have is a toolkit of go-to things depending on how I'm feeling. See, anything that, to me, I come from a very rigorous background. Okay, my dad was very, everything was in the right place, and you finished everything you started, and X, Y, Z, everything, and that's how I became the sort of scientist, computer guy, which served me very well for many years. But the problem is that anytime you put a process around something too strongly, too much structure, you actually put yourself in a cage. So you want to create processes only to the degree that they're a platform that you can jump up on to see the next thing to do. But most people will put a cage around themselves, say, I have to get up at 6 a.m. and I have to meditate for 17.6 seconds or minutes or whatever, and then I got to drink 3 ounces of water. And if that makes them feel good, then great. That's serving them. But oftentimes there's a like, oh God, I got to do that when my inner being is telling me I should sleep another hour. Well, sleep the next hour. Don't follow the schedule because the past you decided that this is what's going to get you to the future. Your inner being knows. Your job is to find whatever you can do to find alignment in every moment possible, and then follow the impulses that come. So do I meditate every day? Pretty much. Yeah. Do I meditate first thing in the morning? Mostly. Sometimes. And then on a nice day like today, no, I do it outside, and I'll do it in the middle of the day. Right. Sit on the back porch, and maybe it'll be 5 minutes, maybe it'll be 20 minutes. But I always drink tons of water. I've got probably 10 16-ounce glasses with some sea salt in each one because that catalyzes in my cells. But my body tells me to do that. It tells me to breathe. It tells me to drink lots of water. It tells me to move my body, and that allows the energy to flow even more, and then I can be more of the coach channel that I am.
I love that perspective because I've talked. I am fascinated by morning routines, and I guess I haven't. We wake up and we follow a routine, but that kind of takes us away from trusting our instinct. If we woke up every day and okay, what do I need to do? I'm going to try that. I like that.
Good for
because you can get stuck into a rigid routine that can feel like it's pulling you away from what you're wanting to do. So after you've acquired some of the knowledge and gone through coaching, have you changed any of your routines or activities or behaviors? Because one of the things I've found from coaching is you learn a lot about yourself. And some of those lessons are so profound. I always like to ask that of other coaches. You learn these lessons, and what major lessons have you learned from coaching others about the law of attraction or just anything in general?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's a great coaching question. Yeah, I guess probably the biggest thing, I sort of alluded to it earlier, was that as soon as I start to assume that I know what their answer is, or even what the next step is for the client, then I'm out of alignment, and I can feel it. Like right now, I'm so sensitized to energy. I'm so tuned in that it doesn't take much to feel pushed off center. And I can feel it in my body, and then I can feel the client start to go off their own center. And so then I have to get back present and remember that the client is the boss, and that I am the channel, the coach for their inner being, their higher self. Actually, part of it comes through me. I feel where they want to go but don't know that they want to go. I can feel that energy, and all they need is to find their way back to their own alignment so they can feel that guiding impulse, and then they can go in their own direction. So then from that sort of holistic perspective, I can then feel what's the next question, what's the next thing I want to from a new perspective. Sometimes I get an idea and I ask permission, can I share this idea with you, because I'm getting a download. And learning to detach from their outcome and know that they're having their journey, and law of attraction will take care of them just as it's taking care of me. And my job is to be in alignment with me. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned over however many years of coaching that I've been doing.
And the fastest way for you to get into alignment is just to stop, go into the moment, and breathe and focus on the moment.
Well, we have a little saying that we made up, my wife and I, because she teaches this as well, in different ways.
Right.
But we kind of similar stuff. We say it's stop, drop, and flow.
I love it. Stop, drop, and flow.
Yeah. So stop what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whatever it is, stop.
Okay.
Drop what you're thinking. Become intensely present in the now moment.
Okay.
Out of the future, out of the past, into the now moment, and get back into flow. Find any way to get into alignment again with yourself. And that interrupts the pattern that's going on. So that you can then find your way back into alignment, and then the impulses start to flow again.
Now, a lot of times, a separate question. I just wanted to see if this is a phenomenon. One thing I've noticed when you coach somebody, and you'll find that they end up doing way more incredible things than you even thought possible. Yes. It's like, I don't even know if I could even accomplish some of this stuff that I see when you coach it. It's like a magnification. Does that make sense? I'm trying to explain it. Like, I'll give a suggestion or give ideas or ask questions, and I'll see this huge transformation. And it's like I'm trying to put it. Do you understand the phenomenon?
I totally
that I'm
understand.
talking about?
Yes, I regularly experience this now, particularly with the channeling clients, more than I've ever experienced as a coach of, sort of the wider demographic.
Right.
Because channeling clients are already aligned. They're already pulling through powerful energy. And so I can find ways to pop open the valve in a gentle way, gentle, safe environment, and then they can then open up completely to themselves. So what you're experiencing is the unlimited energy of Source.
Right.
So you're not only getting the energy flowing through you, which helps them, but now you're being guided to exactly the switch that needs to be flipped so that they can open up to this exponential geometric energy. And so anything's possible when you do
Right.
that.
Let me talk about energy then, because that also, you're very tuned into energy, as you had mentioned. So one thing that happens when you work with clients, you almost get an energetic connection, which can be bad or good.
Depends on your frequency.
Do you go through a process of separating your energy or open your energy up to them? There can be a two-way flow, a one-way flow. That's one of the things that I've noticed when you start coaching. There's an energy connection that you start with your clients. And is there a way for you to monitor that so it doesn't affect your own health?
Well, yeah, no, it won't affect my health because
Right.
I manage my own vibration. I
Right.
wouldn't get that low, but there is a two-way communication. I would say that my stronger energy connection is with my own inner being, my own higher self, which is then in turn connected to their higher self. I don't get, my greatest benefit to my client is not getting into their energy.
Right.
Because if we're both down at the bottom of the well thrashing around, I mean, nobody's helping anybody, right? I've got to be higher up on the ladder to be able to help lift them up, and they're lifting themselves up. But I'm providing a powerful environment of positive energy and reflection from their own inner being so that they can start to climb up the ladder on their own.
Right. Now, as you had experienced with this miracle in overcoming and also the brain tumor, we capture emotions and energy in our bodies and we hold it, and it ends up making us sick in many ways. It's an epidemic. And so for people out there that are experiencing this, where they know what are good techniques or ways to release energy that we've trapped in our bodies, to maintain our health. Because I think a lot of times that's the core problem with people's health problems, is that we're holding the emotion or energy in our body. And sometimes it's a little more difficult than just saying, I want to release it. There is a process to releasing it. And I wanted to know what your go-to techniques or what you've learned or suggestions that you could make about how to release those energies.
Yeah, that's a great question. And interesting timing, because I had one of those moments much earlier today. A release moment. See, people think that when you do this spiritual work and you become aligned and then you just float on a cloud all day, and that's not at all the case. Right. You know that.
Of course,
right?
Of course, yes.
Right. So the difference is that I have techniques that don't allow me that allow me not to stay at the bottom of the emotional scale for any length of time. Right. I don't stay down there. Right, and if I do get stuck down there for a day or two, it gets really, really bad, and I finally get to a point where I release it. So to answer your question, it helps to understand the emotional scale, and for the listeners who aren't familiar with it, it's good to go out and get an Abraham Hicks book that has the 22 emotions, because it gives you a lot of context. In essence, when you're down at the bottom on a given subject, and you're on a different emotion depending on the subject, so it helps to know what the subject is. Usually you do. You're down in fear, or you're guilt, or feeling powerless or unworthy, and you finally have that awareness that that's where I'm at, then the next grouping up from the bottom is anger, rage, revenge, hatred, blame, and nobody wants to hear that, because you immediately think, oh, now I'm going to go get in a conflict, maybe I'll get locked up, maybe I'll be shot, Right. But the thing is, the secret is that, two things, is that number one, you have to go through those emotions to get beyond those emotions on a given subject. There is no way around it. Right. You can change subjects and ignore it, and sometimes it'll go away. But if it keeps coming back, you got to face the emotion head on and be deliberate about finding a way to express your anger. And so, caveat, biggest caveat, big lights flashing right now, pay attention.
Right.
You don't do this around anybody else.
Right.
This is a solo venture unless you got a coach like me who knows how to coach you through it. And then you find any way you can to express that anger as vehemently and violently and physically as you can by yourself. Now, we have a room here in the basement. We have a finished basement. And I have a 80-pound sandbag, and I've got boxing gloves, and I've got a variety of baseball bats, and probably 3 dozen cardboard boxes of varying sizes. And we bring clients down here, and when they're at that point where you can feel the things are bubbling up, and they're starting to, like, they're finally having the awareness of, oh my God, I'm feeling so powerless. I'm ready to do something about this. So, okay, come on, let's go into the breakout room here, and you got your choice of weapons. And people are either scared to death or they're excited beyond measure that they get to hit something.
Right.
And so I will coach them through. I'll remind them what it was that they were upset about, or where they're feeling powerless, or who it was that were pushing their buttons. So just gently coach them. We'll bring up the emotions, and then as soon as you start swinging the bat, it's like a two-way street. It's like when you smile, you feel good. When you feel good, you smile. It's physiologically, it's a bidirectional kind of thing. So when you start moving the body, the emotions start to come up.
Okay.
And I've seen some of the most amazing breakthroughs, tears, and just lightness that occurs in 5 minutes of doing that.
Oh, wow.
And so I do it myself now. This morning, I've had several days where some stuff was really pulling me off center, and I wasn't doing the work on myself. And it finally culminated early this morning. It's like, okay, that's it, Kevin. Time to do what you teach. And I spent a good 10 minutes in there and had a great time.
So somebody sitting in their car that maybe doesn't have the a primal scream or something, just to
roll up the
let
windows
go.
and hit the steering wheel, not the horn. Hit the steering wheel.
Right.
Scream at the top of your lungs. Tell the world who you hate, what you're upset about. Hatred and revenge and rage and jealousy, those are all valid emotions because they're just guidance. They're feedback to let you know that you're way out of alignment, you've been thinking thoughts that aren't serving you, and it's okay to release them. Because as soon as you face into them and release them, then now you can move up the scale. You won't get stuck there, I promise.
Okay. So I want to attract incredible, joyous emotions in my life. And for a lot of people, that is difficult because there's experiences that I haven't had, and I want to know that particular feeling. I want to know the feeling of landing in my helicopter on my yacht and getting off. Well, maybe I haven't experienced that. So give me an impression on how you would suggest that somebody create these high vibration emotions that they have not experienced. It takes a little bit of level of imagination creation, but is there any techniques that you would recommend where we can amplify these higher emotions in even not, doesn't necessarily have to be in a state of meditation, but in the process of manifestation? If you've had any shortcuts or tricks or ideas on how to create and amplify these higher level emotions.
Sure, yeah, there's lots of techniques. The first question is, why do you want to do that?
Because I want to feel more of those emotions, and I want to see that reflected to me in the outside world.
Yeah. Well, the reflection is inherent. Okay, it's like when you stand in front of a mirror, you can't do anything but reflect.
Right.
So everything in your life, in our lives, is an exact vibrational reflection of the energy we've been putting out through thought over however much period of time. So the manifestations will always come on the heels of the vibrational alignment. So like Abraham says, everything's about momentum. Law of attraction is two pieces. It's frequency, which is reflected by what emotion we're feeling, and it's momentum, which is how long we've been on that frequency.
Right.
Okay, and that's how long the car goes in a certain direction versus another direction. And the longer you're on worry, then the faster the car goes. More law of attraction reflects back worry. And so you build up a big worry vibration. Well, it works at any frequency. So the secret is to catch when you're in the low frequencies by paying attention to how you feel and then moving up the scale, like through expressing anger or other ways. And if you're higher on the list, then it's about milking that energy using techniques such as lists of positive aspects. You can do the list of appreciation. You can go out in nature and just not think and be present with nature, observe everything. It doesn't see the thing that people believe thanks to the way they were brought up, is that I've got to set a goal and I've got to work hard on the goal and I've got to think about the goal all the time and then the goal will show up. Well, the problem with thinking about the goal that you don't have is that you're thinking about the fact that you don't have it usually, and that prevents it from coming. So you don't have to be on the thought of the goal that you want. You have to be on the frequency of the thing, which is, as you said, how you want to feel. And that's generic. Any way that you can feel good, you can come around that at any angle. The more time, meditation, of course, is the number one starting point to stop the mind. By stopping the mind, we float up to that frequency. And then you do everything you can to milk that frequency. And then you get to the point where you don't need the manifestation because you're feeling good all the time. And then the manifestations show up.
Right. So there's one thing I talk about on my channel is reality transurfing. I don't know if you've heard about reality transurfing. It's sort of a form of advanced law of attraction. It takes into some other tech ideas that we kind of naturally deal with when we talk about it. And I wanted to get your perspective of it. It's good that you haven't read about it. So it's interesting when I talk to a law of attraction coach that it still mirrors some of the stuff in reality. So one of the topics in reality transurfing is if we're creating our thoughts are creating reality. There's these pendulums, which are it's an outside force that is a group of thoughts that end up controlling us. It can be good and bad. It can be corporations or governments.
I don't see that possible.
And you don't think that's possible?
Well, nothing controls us.
Let me just not say control. We are submitting ourselves and giving ourselves to the pendulum. We do that all the time when we go to our job or whatever. A pendulum is more than just us. It's a group of thoughts that pull us into a certain direction. I think it's becoming aware that while we're creating our thoughts, there's these other outside forces that are also using the law of attraction and thoughts. And so I wanted to, how do you have people maneuver through these pendulums? It could be a government, it could be a culture, it could be a family, it could be a group, or whenever you have 4 or 5 people thinking thoughts, it can pull you into a certain direction once you get sucked into that pendulum. We do it voluntarily, but sometimes it can be deceptive. The pendulum can be deceptive, and I wanted to know how you would coach people in maneuvering through what they refer to as pendulums.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing you say is it sounds like there are potential outside influences which could affect your experience.
Right.
Okay, so that doesn't, again, back to the idea of reflection. All those pendulums are reflections of the vibration that you have going on at any moment. Now, momentum can build, like we were talking about earlier. If there's, let's say the government, there's a negative energy, you call them pendulums. It's just energy in play. It's energy momentum in play. The only way that you'll ever align with that, the only way it'll even show up in your experience, your mirror, is if you're on that frequency already.
Right. And we're all on these frequencies all the time. We open up our computer.
Wait a second, though. Why did you open up the computer? Because you got an impulse to do that. Where did the impulse come from? It came from your vibration. Where did the vibration come from was the thoughts you were already thinking and the momentum you had in play. So it's still a reflection
of me,
of what you've been thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. We are the creators of our reality, and there's nothing that's more powerful than our thoughts.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So another topic they talk about is importance. And we've seen this when we've tried to manifest, when we have something that we really, really badly want so bad, or that girl I have a huge crush on, or that job that I can't, oh, please, 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 I want that. As soon as we start to go into that mode where we create importance for it, then there's balancing forces that seem to work against us to counter the amount of energy we're putting into the importance of it. Does that make sense?
Sure. What's the feeling behind desperately needing something? Is it joy and love, or is it powerless?
It's want. Yeah, it's the lack.
Yeah, and so that's what you have to manifest, which means the thing cannot show up.
Right.
As soon as we attach to a manifestation, making that more important than the feeling that we want from the manifestation, then it can't come because we're focused on the lack of it being there.
Right. Okay. So I've learned so much so far in this conversation. I just thank you, and I could keep on going. There's so many little aspects to the law of attraction. Is there anything in particular that's been a big realization recently that's changed your philosophy about the law of attraction? We're always learning, and so there's new things that you're learning, and as you start to teach intuitives I'm sure that you're learning as well. Have you had any realizations that it kind of, maybe a small modification or a new realization or epiphany as you go along this process that you could share that could help us?
Yeah, good question. I'd say that from the law of attraction standpoint, it's just gotten simpler the more experiences that I have, particularly when I talk with or coach with people who are channeling from the broader consciousness, and I'm participating actively. When I work with a channel, when I coach a channel, I'm often being the person asking the questions through the channel to pull that energy through them. So I get to talk to Source all the time, which is
it's amazing.
It doesn't get better than that. And so, of course, I get all this pure knowledge, and it just helps me very simplify and refine my understanding. And basically what I just shared, the idea of frequency and momentum, that's law of attraction. Everything's a mirror of that. Now, in terms of my own growth, what I've realized fairly recently, as I've decided to refine my coaching practice to only being the intuitive part of the Lightworker community, is that the more you tune into what you want, the more you allow yourself to be connected with what you want to do, the faster the energy moves. And things I created 6-7 months ago, I created a LightworkerXchange meetup group, and then it's going to be a Facebook group for Lightworkers to come and join. That's already become boring. And I was coaching people like 3 months ago into intuition in this beautiful 8-week program. All of a sudden, that's boring now. And now channels have shown up in full force. I've been coaching channels on and off for a number of years, but now I'm exclusively doing it, and now they're showing up. And the energy is so much more powerful now that it's taxing me to do the work that I'm teaching and coaching other people to do. I've got to do the alignment work on my body and my soul, or I can't keep up with what I've created.
Yeah. So I'm of course I want to ask you've been around so many channels. There's got to be some fascinating stories. Some that are like, wow, it's the stuff beyond comprehension. Maybe other planets or aliens or anything that's really interesting that you've encountered that gives us a little bit better knowledge of the universe that we would all love to know about through these channels.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, so the interesting thing is I've come back, so I'll tell you real quickly. When I got into the channeling, and I first couldn't believe that, in fact, there was this broader intelligence, and it was everywhere, and it was pure love, and there was no criticism, no judgment. It was, and then as I got into that, then of course I'm curious about, well, what else is out there? Are there ETs? There are other dimensions? And yes, the answer is yes. There's more life than you can imagine in this universe and other universes as well. And yes, there are people who channel the ETs, and I've probably spoken to a few now that I think about it through various channels, because a channel is just a connection to another consciousness. Doesn't matter where it is, because there's no time and there's no space. Everything is here. Everything is now. So there's no distance to an ET who's in this energy. The only difference between an ET and the spiritual consciousness that we're talking about, non-physical, is whether or not they're projecting into a body or not. And there's more than I can imagine. Now, that being said, then, as I've gone through this evolution, to me that's all passé now. I'm now more than ever, I care about being here and now on this planet that I chose to come to and step into the mission and the purpose that I'm here to do, which is to help the evolution of the planet through these.
Have you encountered multidimensional beings that seem to contradict others, that were in opposition with their message, that seemed a little bit off?
Well, in all cases, it'll still be a reflection of my contradiction if I have any.
Oh, okay.
People worry about, are there evil spirits? Of
course, there are people listening to this that are thinking, I don't want to do that because I'm scared that I'm going to have a demon that's going to come into me or something like that.
And I would say then don't do it at that time, because you're not in alignment with the concept. You will attract. Is there negative energy? Of course there is. We create everything. And all consciousness needs contrast, the negative and the positive, to see the difference. So you have to have the unwanted to have clarity around the wanted, not the unwanted to get the unwanted. And so it's all good, but the question is whether you'll tune into it. I had a lady in the last class she was from a conservative Catholic background, and yet this energy was coming out, and so she came to me and wanted to be in the program. And one of the segments I do is I play some music, and I say, who do you think is playing the music? And so they'll get an image in their head, it's a little intuitive thing. And she said, and they're all thinking, oh, there's this old African American guy playing the piano, and he's doing a great job. And that would be my thing too. That's what I would think. But then this one lady, she says, no, I'm getting a 12-year-old boy playing the piano, and that's who it was.
Oh, wow.
There's this 12-year-old boy from Indonesia. His name is Joey Alexander. He's like in his late teens now, I think, playing a John Coltrane jazz tune called Giant Steps, one of the hardest jazz pieces, right? Because every
I'm
chord...
aware of that. Very hard.
Right. Yes, and yet at 12 years old, he's improvising as some of the best jazz musicians I have ever heard. Is he channeling? 100%.
Of course, yes.
Yes.
And when we talk about it like that, all great artists are channeling. All of and perhaps that's the ultimate test is when you truly create, you're opening to channel completely and fully.
Yes, it's what we call it. Well, people call it flow state.
Flow state, right?
That's kind of the generic term. When I talk about channeling for the people I'm coaching now, it's more about verbal channeling, connection, and with a stream of conscious and subconsciously translating it. But it applies to pretty much anything where you're in the flow state.
Now, something that I talk about in my book that's coming out is parallel reality. So I wanted to get your perspective. Can we channel parallel versions of ourselves or versions in other realities? Do you think that is a possibility, or have you encountered that in any way?
I have not. I have done, I did a regression. It's called Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, QHHT.
Yes.
It's like a good
It's wonderful
5-hour thing.
Dolores Canyon. Yes, it's wonderful. I'm aware of it, and I've trained with that as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I had one of those last year, and I actually was in different aspects of my own past, and I was at Atlantis, and there's some things, and that which resonated from other experiences I had. There was very parallel energy, and it was interesting. But again, what I've kind of come full circle in that I care personally less now about what happened in my past or past lives or other dimensions, because that's all interesting, and if you want to pursue it, that's fantastic. That's your journey. And my journey now has come back to here and now. Yeah,
it's really all irrelevant because all we have is this moment. We can talk about it and it's fun to talk about, but the moment is the key. And that's the key. That's the big awareness that comes when you start to focus on this stuff. Is that I think it's a part of the lesson that we learn. We're interested in the past or what's going to happen in the future, but it all comes from right now in this moment, every second. And thank you for the lessons that you've given me. I'm sure that we could keep on talking. And as always happens, as soon as I'm done with this conversation, I'll have 4 or 5 more questions. But I always ask a couple other small questions to everybody just because, and they're just for fun, because I'm a big movie buff.
Okay.
And so I always like to ask, is there a movie that you may suggest that I haven't seen that I might like?
Well, that you haven't seen?
Or just give me your favorite movie if that's the easiest. But if there's like a unique movie that I might not have heard, I always like to find out of movies that I might not have heard. So
wow, there's so many. I think all the movies along the lines of the Matrix series was really philosophical for me, right? It had a very clear tie-in to law of attraction. I'm a big follower of Star Trek and Star Wars because of the...
So am I.
Yeah, I'm not
big
surprised. Yeah, so if I think of something, I can't think of anything you probably wouldn't already know.
No, that's, and do you have a particular book, first of all, in this field that really touched you that you'd recommend that in the law? Is it? We talked about Abraham Hicks. Was there any other books that you might recommend that somebody out there might read that could be inspiring or uplifting?
Well, the books, certainly the Abraham Hicks books have probably modern day, from a modern day perspective, are the most important, have been the most important for me, because everything else, when you find alignment and harmony, everything else manifests off of that. So, after that, it's just like, what are you interested in,
Well, thank you for being so gracious with your time and answering these questions. Everybody, if you want to get some coaching from Kevin, you can go to pspprograms.com, and you and your wife, Suzanne, offer coaching with law of attraction, lots of experience in this stuff. If you are intuitive and you want to embrace your talent and expand on this, the person that you need to talk to is Kevin, and I will include a link with this episode. And I just thank you. I'm so happy that you took the time, and we just barely met, so I appreciate you spending the time with me. And let's talk again soon as we go along. All right?
Would love that, Brian. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Namaste.